Hello, amazing artists. Welcome back to another edition of Art with Mrs. Young. I come to you today from my backyard. Spring is in the air and butterflies are everywhere. So I thought, what better time to do a butterfly art project? Today, we're gonna do one of my favorite activities, printmaking. We are going to be creating a Collagraph printing plate and printing a butterfly. Let's get started. For this project, you will need a piece of thick white paper, a piece of aluminum foil that's slightly bigger than the paper, some thin cardboard such as a cereal box, some scissors, some glue, some water-based markers. You'll also need a way to put water on your paper. I'm going to use a large paintbrush. You can use a clean kitchen sponge or a spray bottle if you have it. Other supplies will be required if you wish to extend this project, but we'll get to that later on in the lesson. Okay, to get started on our butterfly Collagraph, I am going to take my cereal box, and I notice whatever box you're using, I decided to go with a cereal box because one box should be pretty much enough to do my whole project. And I noticed that the cereal box has two sides that are the large rectangles. So I cut one of those sides down and decide what paper you're gonna use. I'm using a little bit thicker white paper, but you use whatever you have. Just to make sure that your Collagraph plate, so the base of your Collagraph printing plate, fits onto your paper. You don't want a plate that's bigger than your paper because it'll go off the paper. Now, you don't have to do a plate for the background. You could just cut out the actual butterfly shape and just print the butterfly. I like to do a little bit of a background on mine. So all I'm gonna do is take the other pieces of thin cardboard, and I am going to start creating the base of my butterfly first. I know that my butterfly has a body in the middle that's 3 parts, and then some designs, and I know that whatever I do on this side of my butterfly, I do on this side of my butterfly. So my suggestion to you is to keep it simple. If you are a kindergartner or first grader and you have trouble cutting, I don't want that to stop you from doing this project. You can always draw your pieces and have someone older cut it out for you. Okay, so you can do this part any way you wish, but for mine, I cut part of the box down, and this is gonna be my butterfly's wings. And so I want it to take up a good amount of the paper. Maybe I want to trim it down a little here. Save all these scraps for the details. So once I have that, I'm gonna actually fold this in half. You don't have to do it this way, but it's just a really easy way to get your symmetric wings. And then I am just going to, and you can sketch this out first, but I'm gonna make mine have gonna open that up. I'm happy with that shape. You could do your wings in 4 pieces, but when I look at it here, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue that down. Remember, you only have to glue the edges. You never have to glue the middle. And just like in class, we're gonna hold it for at least 5 long Mississippis just to get it down. I don't want to do too many layers because I'm going to end up covering this with aluminum foil and actually making a print with it. So if it gets piled up too high, the print won't come out so great. So we're going to keep it really simple because it just makes for a better print. So for the body, I think I'm going to kind of make a body for the center. You could fold this in half if you wanted to, but let's hope that fits. There we go. So I'm gonna glue that on. Now, if you have objects around your house like yarn or things that aren't too bulky, you can always put that on here, and for some more texture for your print would be really neat. I'm just gonna stick with the cardboard because I figure that is something that everybody has in your recycle bin. And if you have big wads of glue, just kind of spread those out because they will show up in your print if they dry like that. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and add some details to my butterfly. I'm gonna speed things up a bit and get creative. Once you're happy with your design and you have everything laid out, which I would do that first. I started to glue here and then I stopped myself because I just think it's a good idea to get everything laid out, take a step back, maybe even take a break for a little bit and come back and look at it. I'm happy with this one. I'm okay that it has pencil marks here because all that's gonna get covered up. So I am ready to glue. I'm gonna use the white school glue and I am not going to over glue or you will have a mess on your hands. Now actually here, I think, now that I'm thinking about it, I realized that I forgot the antenna. So I'm gonna real quick add the antenna, but I'll do that after I glue everything else. Okay, once your Collagraph is completely dry, you can go ahead and spread a little bit of glue across the top if you have a glue stick, and you are going to get a piece of aluminum foil that has about an 1 to 2 inch frame around your Collagraph. The foil has a dull side and it has a shiny side. We're gonna be drawing on the dull side or coloring on the dull side, so we're gonna put the shiny side down, and I actually like to, we're gonna put the dull side down, the shiny side up, and then place this upside down like that. Now, so see the dull side is up. And then this is where you have to be careful. Just using your fingertips, go ahead and rub all of those details so that you can see everything you did. I'm gonna now fold it over on the back. If you have tape, you can tape it down, but you certainly don't have to. Okay, so but at this point, our Collagraph printing plate is ready to add some color. And don't be afraid to take the time to really rub all of the details into this. All right, so in the art room, I'm constantly talking about mixing warm and cool colors. And when you mix warm and cool colors together, certain ones anyway, you know that you get mud. So complementary colors look great next to each other, like these gator colors, orange and blue. But when you actually mix them together, you get brown. The same with purple and yellow. They look fabulous next to each other, but when you mix them together, they make brown. And the same with red and green or pink and green. So you may color this any way you wish, but my suggestion is to choose either warm colors for the butterfly and cool colors for the background, or warm colors for the butterfly and cool colors for the background. Let's just review for a second. Remember, warm colors, and pink can kind of go with either group depending on the shade of pink, but I'm gonna put it with my warm colors this time because it goes with all of these. The warm colors evoke a sense of warmth. So these are the colors of the sun, of sunflowers. Just kind of give you a feeling of warmth. The cool colors, on the other hand, give a feeling of cool, like cool grass, a cool jungle, the deep ocean. I always think blue in the ocean and everything around blue is a cool color. Now pink goes beautifully with purple and blue, but when you mix it with green, you get mud. So I only tell you that because if you go mix all the colors together, it might turn out beautifully, but it could also get a little bit muddy. So for me, I am going to keep I think I'm gonna do the cool colors on the inside and the warm colors on the outside. So I'm just going to start coloring. I may actually add some pink in here if it's surrounded by blue or purple, but remember, pink can go on either cool or warm. So you could even take a tip of a pencil and carve designs on this into the foil. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. I think simpler is better for this. So when we start to color, remember butterflies are symmetric. So whatever I color on one side, I'm gonna color on the other. Now it's okay if this starts to bead up or it starts to dry. It's marker, and we're gonna use some water at the end. Speaking of water at the end, I'm gonna use a large brush to wet my paper, but if you have a squirt bottle, or if you have a wet, clean sponge that you could use, that would work great too. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But let's focus on getting the color done. Don't worry about it drying up. You could leave this for as long as you wanted to, but I'm gonna set this to the side and bring my paper to the middle. Now, like when we did the Zentangle print, if you did that, if you have a squirt bottle, it's the easiest thing you can do is just squirt the paper. You don't want it soaking wet, but you want it damp, every bit damp, to pull the color into the paper. If it's soaking wet, it will pull the color in and it will be really blurred. If that's what you want, go for it. If you don't use enough water, you won't get a complete print. But really, there's no need to fret about this because you can do this as many times as you want with as many different patterns, as many colors, whatever you want to do. You have a printing plate. As long as you don't rip the foil, you can use it over and over. And even if you do rip the foil, you just put a new piece of foil on it. So if you have a clean kitchen sponge and a bowl of water, that works great too, to sponge it in. Now, depending on the type of paper you're using, I'm using watercolor paper, so I have a little bit thicker paper, but just be careful with this part. So I'm just gonna use a big brush and I am going to wet my paper completely. I want it damp, but not soaking wet. If it gets really, really wet, you can take newspaper print or a towel and just kind of dry it off or let it just sit for a moment to soak in some of the moisture before you pull your print. All right, just don't wait too long. Now, you could lay your print on it. I prefer taking the Collagraph so I have more control and I'm not dealing with the colors. This might be a little too wet, but I'm going to just go for it anyway. Now, once you set it down, you don't want to slide your paper at all. So I kind of use two hands to keep it, especially this paper is very slippery when I do it. So I'm holding the edges, but I really want to get my hands are dirty, so it's getting my paper dirty, but I want to get every part. You want to do this fairly quickly while your paper's still wet, but you want to really rub on all of the raised parts of your Collagraph print. You can kind of peek at it, and if you see that there's still a lot of color on there, you can go ahead and keep on rubbing. This is why you don't want to put too many layers of collage on your Collagraph print, because you want to really be able to print it all down in there. Take as much time as you need. Oops, all right, I got a pretty good print. Now, this is again why you can see where I got a little bit of mud there and a little there, and that's okay. My pink worked out really well here. I love the look of a print. It's not gonna be crisp and precise unless you were to use printing ink and a brayer, which we use in the art room, but not here. Styrofoam, you can do the same thing if you carve into styrofoam and make a print. But it's just a really fun way. You can see I probably could have rubbed a little bit more here. But this is why I can take a sponge, I can wipe this down, and I can do another print. I can do as many prints as I want. Once you are finished with your print, now I love this one. I love the way that it is not perfect, but I really like Impressionist art, and so that's kind of my favorite. But if you're into more of detailed, then you might want to print a different way. But this is a great way to print. Now for the background, you could add stripes, you could add polka dots when you do a second print, however you want to do it. But you see what happens when you mix those complementary colors. So I'm going to show you a few ideas for what we can do when you are finished with your printing plate. Okay, so the great thing about a Collagraph printing plate is that it can be a piece of art all on its own. You could glue this to a background piece of paper, or just leave it like this and it's a beautiful piece of art. You could continue to make prints using the markers, water-based markers with different colors. One thing that you could do before you put the foil on, or even after if you're careful, is to do a rubbing. I mentioned that before, but if you don't have markers and you're not able to pull a print, rubbings are really cool, and you can do as many rubbings as you want. So a thin piece of just regular printer paper works great. And I'm gonna use two colors. I'm gonna use colors that I know blend well together. So I know that red and blue make purple. So the key is to hold it down, go on the side of your crayons, and do a rubbing. So there is a Collagraph rubbing. That's one great idea. And again, you can make multiple sets of these. You can do different colors and make like Warhol prints. But that's one thing you can do with this plate. Okay, another idea, if you want a permanent piece of art from your Collagraph printing plate, is to use permanent markers. They don't have to be Sharpie, but a permanent marker. Color the whole thing in, and then you've got a piece of art that has a metallic shine that you can keep forever. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what that would look like. Once your Sharpie is dry, you are left with a permanent, beautiful, metallic piece of art. As one final idea, if you happen to have some fine steel wool at your house, which I know many of you don't, and some black spray paint, or any color spray paint really, but black is what I used. For a different video, I did a robot Collagraph with the prints all the same. You can really do any picture with Collagraph. And this one, I sprayed it with just lightly, not completely, but just lightly with black spray paint. And then I burnished the spray paint off, or scraped it off. And it gives kind of a, especially for a robot, a nice antique-y look. But I'm gonna try it with, I've never tried it with foil that's already been colored, but I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a try, and we'll see how that works out. And if you happen to have these materials at home, that's one more idea that you could do with this Collagraph plate. Okay, so once you've sprayed it and it's completely dry, you're just going to take the fine steel wool, and I highly recommend doing this outside, and you are just going to start burnishing. I probably should have sprayed it a little lighter, because if you spray too much spray paint on it, it's almost impossible to get it off. But you can see like a little bit of the color show through, and it's just kind of a neat finish if you like that look. I hope you had fun today. There are so many things that you can do with a Collagraph printing plate. I can't wait to see what you created.